friends, welcome back to Hello Friends. My name is Kyle, your host. This is my Mr. Robot review show. We got the Hello Friends t-shirt, the hat here. You already know if you've seen the other episodes here. We do have a little peek behind the curtain. We got our laptop here because there's just a lot going on in this episode, and I just wanted to put some notes on there. So I'm going to be getting my thoughts on there. The show stays the same. I'm going to be sort of reading off like a little script here, just some notes I took. This is episode 18, which is crazy, a little crazy in itself. We're getting along there now that we're back to the weekly schedule. These are going pretty quick. We're getting towards the latter half of season 2, so there's a lot going on. But this one is going to be called Stage 2 because it's just all about Stage 2, and we get a big reveal at the end. But we'll kind of go over that. So the opening here, this is when we find out why Elliot went to prison. So Elliot is like in his apartment there, and he's got his hood up and he's doing the hack or whatever. There's banging on the door, which I think we saw back either the end of season 1, I think, or early season 2, I don't remember, but we don't know who was on the other side of that door. So now we find out it's the FBI or the police. They're arresting Elliot. We find out it's for grand larceny. Eventually we find out it's Michael Shannon's dog that was worth $1,200. I'm like, I don't know why the dog is so expensive, but because of that amount there, and because Elliot hacked like all of his shit, basically, he's going to jail for that. We get a quick scene of Elliot talking to his lawyer. There's a great scene where like his lawyer's going like, all right, now when they say plead, you need to say not guilty. And Elliot's like sitting there and he's just looking out. He's looking out the window, and the lawyer's like, dude, are you listening to me? It's probably like a public defender, but that's a cool little scene. Rami is very good in this episode. Then we go to the court scene. This is an awesome scene, but they're doing like a video conference basically. The judge is like, okay, Mr. Alderson, how do you plead? And he goes, guilty. And the judge is kind of like, what? He's like, Mr. Alderson, you are aware that like the dog was $1,200, which is a felony. So he's like, you do understand that this would be 18 months in prison? And he's like, he nods his head, and he's like, let the record reflect that he nods his head. And then there's a really great shot because like Mr. Robot comes in and he's like, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like yelling at him, but Elliot is just like owning up to everything. So he's like, it's time to come clean. Like I did what I did basically. So yeah, Michael Shannon's in the jury there, and he's like, adios, you son of a bitch. And that's kind of the opening. We get the Mr. Robot title card there. Then we get a quick recap with Leon. He goes around the prison yard, everything that we've known in season 2. We get an awesome shot of like Ray's henchman or his bodyguard like walking Elliot. He's just like one of the officers or like one of the employees there in the jail. And we get like a quick shot of Ray, who's the warden, and he's like, yo, come by my office after. And he's just on like a polo or whatever. Like Ray's he's the warden of the prison apparently. So that's really cool. We see the pyro, and like we go to the basketball court. The basketball court bench is just like a little bench. The cinematography is amazing, as it always is in Mr. Robot, where it's like a straight line, and like they call him Leon calls him Speedy Gonzalez because he's like arrested, convicted, all sent to prison like all within 24 hours. He's like, that never happens. So Joey Badass is always really good as Leon. So we kind of get that. It turns out that eventually Elliot gets released, mostly due to the hack. The prison is facing some budget cuts, and the officers man, we've never had to do this before, but we have to release all of these non-violent offenders. And it turns out that Elliot only ends up serving 86 days of his 18-month sentence. So that's a huge break for Elliot. And obviously because of the 5-9 hack is why he got out. So whether that was a plan all along, who knows. But so then we have like a nice little scene where Angela needs to sneak in like that little USB drive that like hacks the computer. She needs to get to the front desk of E-Corp, and like Darlene calls and she's like, hey, I have some flowers, I need you to come downstairs. The blonde chick is like, hey, I can't leave my desk, and she's like, please, like, I really just need you to come downstairs. And she's like, all right. So that blonde girl goes downstairs, the receptionist. Angela swoops in, she like sticks the USB in there, and then there's like a really cool scene where there's like one of the guys walks by, and he's like, "Hey," and then he gives like a quick look, like he knows that's not Monica, but then he's like, maybe it is Monica, and he doesn't really remember because they're both blonde and he hasn't seen them very often. And he's like, "Can you have Joe give me a call when you get back?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure." And he's like, "Cool." He walks away, so that's like a tense moment. But she takes the USB drive out. She's good to go. She goes to her desk. Angela Moss, Portia does a great job of acting here. She's like on her computer, but she's being real sketchy. She like puts the USB drives in her own computer. She finds the Washington Township files, copies them all to her own USB drive. But she's like, reads it, like exhales. Everyone's just walking by. They're not like looking. I mean, she looks like she's just doing work in the office. So like she's paranoid, and like the audience is paranoid. But in reality, like a big company like that, like no one would question what Angela's doing. Maybe when she goes to the front desk, that would be weird. But she's just going to her lab, her office, and whatever. So, and there's like a nice risk ahead sign behind Angela. So I thought that was neat. So we cut to Darlene and Elliot on the train. Darlene tells Elliot that she can't get in contact with Trenton or Mobley. They're both AWOL. She's like, they're freaking out. Elliot's like, I need to talk to your Dark Army contact, which we know is Cisco. And then we get Elliot. He goes to see his mother, which is a big moment here. She's like in a nursing home now. It's a really sad scene because Elliot goes to see her, and she doesn't say a single word. She's like looking out in the distance, kind of like Elliot was doing earlier in the episode. And he's like, "Hey, are they taking good care of you here?" And she doesn't say anything. He looks at the clock. The clock is broken, so she has like no sense of time, which I thought was a nice little touch. And he's like, "Yeah, it's been really hard without you." But he's like, "I'm getting through it," or whatever. And then he's like, "All right." And he says, it's really sad because he says, "Take care." He doesn't say "I love you" or anything like that. So it's tough to see like how disconnected they are. We then get a scene of White Rose going to the grave of the previous CEO of E-Corp, Lester Moore. She ends up pissing on his grave. There is like a nice little moment here where White Rose reveals that, my project was going to be discontinued and then this guy died. Is that a coincidence? Doesn't seem like it to me. But basically, her henchman or like right-hand man is like, she's like, "Do you know how he died?" And the henchman's like, "Oh, it was a plane accident, I believe." And she's like, "You know how I feel about that word." And then he goes, "I'm sorry, a plane crash." And so she doesn't like the word accident, and that's big. We don't know why that's the case, but that's a nice little touch there. But just a little nice kind of check-in with White Rose there. Then we cut back to Elliot and Darlene going to see Cisco. Last we checked in with Darlene, if you remember, she smacked Cisco over the head with a bat because she found out he was spying on her, and she smashed his computer. This is the first kind of glimpse we get of Elliot and Mr. Robot like kind of glitching out or like losing connection with each other. So something's going on there, but Elliot's having a hard time of controlling him. But as we know, control is an illusion. And then we get what I think is the scene of the episode, an incredible scene here. BD Wong is now going, or White Rose as we know him, going as Minister Zhang, meeting up with Philip Price. We know these two have been kind of in business with each other. Really, really cool aesthetically shot. It's like dreary and wet and gray. They're both holding umbrellas in the rain. Basically, Price reveals that he needed bailout money to save the Washington Township factory, where we find out is where White Rose is like doing an experiment or like working on there. We do find out later in the episode, kind of jumping ahead here, that Angela goes to the nuclear regulatory building and with the files that she found, and she found out that the toxicity levels or the radiation levels are higher than normal still, even to this day. So she's like, I need this fixed. Like, I don't know what's going on here. So obviously White Rose is very interested in that plant. We find out that like the radiation levels are high, so something is obviously going on there. And Philip Price is like, "Look, the government is going to take over. Like the federal government is going to take over this plant on Friday at noon." And he's like, "I needed that bailout money and I couldn't get it." So Philip Price tells Minister Zhang, he's like, "Look," he's like, "if you want that plant," he's like, "China could give me the money I need." He's like, "at 0% interest." He's like, "as a peace offering, it would be a nice way to show that they're in charge of the 21st century." And like he's kind of pushing around BD Wong here, and that's interesting because these are two it's a heavyweight fight basically, like two big names. Like they don't like to answer to anybody. But then we get an amazing quote here that I wrote down from Philip Price. Because BD Wong is like, I don't know if I can give you the money. Philip Price says, I'm a mercenary. I don't play fair. He says, I play what I want. He says, when you deal with a mercenary, all decorum gets thrown out the window. So you go ahead with your cute threats and your watch beeps. And he says, order will not protect you anymore, my friend. He goes, I will rain chaos, even if it hurts me. Because I would rather see you lose than win myself. And then he says, and that's all the time I have. And it's like, mic drop, dude. I had chills during the scene. When he says he will rain chaos, Michael Christopher does an amazing job of delivering that line. And like the camera is so cool. It's always a little off center. But I just put in my notes here that Philip Price bows to no one, not even White Rose, dude. Like he's not playing any games. But that line, keep that line in mind here. I would rather see you lose than win myself, because that may come into play down the stretch without spoiling anything. So Elliot and Cisco, they go to meet the Dark Army contact in that weird ass library that they always go to. I don't know why no one's in that library. I mean, I know no one's really going to libraries anymore, but yeah, it's an interesting aesthetic choice, but it is kind of weird that they're always meeting there. The Dark Army is surprised to see Elliot there, and they start to walk away. Elliot screams, and he's like, look at me. He's like, I want to know what stage 2 is. And nothing else is said. That's the end of the scene. So we don't know what kind of transpired out of that. As I mentioned before, I did jump out of order, but this is actually when Angela goes out to the nuclear regulatory building. She says the radiation levels are too high. She's like, I'm not in this for the money. I just want this to get done. So the guy's like, all right, chill here for a bit. She's like, cool. Eventually, like, another woman comes back, and she's like, hey, come with me. Like, some colleagues want to talk to you. She goes with Angela, or Angela goes with her, actually. And she's like, oh, and I just want to let you know, like, how did you get those files? She's like, you work at E-Corp, right? What is your position? And Angela's like, I never said I worked at E-Corp. And they're like, oh, Angela, we know who you are. And she's like, oh, Angela's like, you know what? I got that thing I got to go to. She's like, I got to go. And she's like, oh, but my colleagues want to talk to you. And she's like, no, I'm going to go. Angel like books it out there. So she's like starting to crumble under the pressure for sure. And we don't know what this company, like, we don't know if they're working with Dark Army or what's going on, but they know about Angela, and things are just like not going well for Angela right now. She kind of had to help out of society, and now she's like failing for it, or seeing the consequences. We cut back to Elliot, Darlene, and Cisco at Cisco's place. Darlene reveals that she forgot the broken VHS tape, the one where she was like recording the F Society like propaganda film, and then she had to take her mask off. The VHS tape like broke. Cisco gets mad. He's like, why do you even use VHS tapes anyway? He's like, there's a million filters you can use for the same thing. He's like, why? Because it's cool. Cisco's like getting pissed off, and he's like so sick of like Darlene's caused this mess, and Darlene's the one who killed Madam Executioner, and like they're in hot water now, and like Cisco's just getting sick of it. But he does care for Darlene to an extent, and he knows he wants to do something for her or make it up. So he's like, all right, I'll go back to the Smart House. But they have to go to the Smart House, even though they've talked about, the cops have probably been there, they've probably swept the place. Like, the odds of that VHS tape being there are low, but they can't leave evidence behind. So then we get Dom showing up at Angela's apartment. She offers food. Dom is always showing up like right when the other team members need her to show up the least. She's got a knack for figuring out what's going on, as I've talked about in previous episodes here. But Angela's like, hey, you gotta leave. She's like, no. She's like, I got your favorite food, sit down. She tells her about like a dream she had. She's like, it started out well, but then she's like, I started drowning underwater. And then this is when Dom reveals to Angela, like, look, Angela, the gig is up. She's like, look, I've been tracking you for a while now. She's like, I can't connect all the dots, but she's like, someone will. And she's like, either me or someone else will. And she's like, the next person that comes in here, they're not going to be offering you food. They're going to be putting you in handcuffs, or they're going to be like taking you off the street and putting you in a dark cell. And she's like, but you still have one hand left to play. She's like, and that's me. So she's like, I'm your only chance left, basically. And then she says, right before she leaves, she says to Angela, when I stopped struggling is when I like woke up, or when I like got out of that dream or figured it out or whatever. Cisco then picks up the VHS tape. Back at the smart house, he sees something off camera. He's kind of like shocked at it. We don't know what it is. I don't remember what it is, so that's exciting. Darlene is then tapped into the Dark Army contact. She hears like the audio recordings or whatever. At the very end, she hears it's either White Rose or it's like the contact talking to White Rose. They're like, hey, he was there, Elliot was there, and it was weird because like he wanted to know what stage 2 was, and then White Rose is like, that doesn't make any sense. Stage 2 is his plan, and that's a huge reveal. Like Elliot's putting together stage 2, and so this is again, we saw, is it Mr. Robot or is it Elliot talking? And like we didn't touch on this earlier, but when Elliot's going to meet the Dark Army, it's usually Mr. Robot talking to them, but he's like, no, I'm gonna do it this time. He's like, he's gonna talk to me, because he initially says like he's gonna talk to Mr. Robot. Cisco's like, what? And he's like, oh, he's gonna talk to me. So it's interesting to see that like Elliot's trying to like either push Mr. Robot out, or he's like trying to be like, I'm gonna do it myself here. But we find out this has been Elliot's plan the whole time, so we have no idea now what to expect. At the very end here, someone's banging on Darlene's door. We don't know who it is. Opens it up. It's the camera. There's a lot of that in this episode. A lot of misdirection or a lot of cliffhangers. Elliot's heading back home because he does say when he's at Cisco's place, he should be home. So it appears like he's having a normal life there. And I was like, oh, dude, nothing is normal in the show. So, but he's got a point. And then he sees Tyrell Wellick's black SUV pulled up outside. The Mr. Robot music is playing. He walks up. Joanna Wellick rolls out her window and she says, hello, Elliot. Cut to black. So this, honestly, for me, guys, this is one of the best episodes of Mr. Robot. Start to finish, there's so much that happens. The cinematography, the score. I mean, we find out that Elliot, why he went to jail, we realized was really from Michael Shannon. And when Michael Shannon was like, talking to Gloria Rubin's character, like, hey, we can get this guy, he must have went to the authorities or something, because he actually, they found him. Or maybe Gloria Rubin's character, maybe his therapist, like, ratted him out, who knows, maybe, because he did ask her for help, but either way, they find Elliot. We find out he goes to jail, but he serves a very quick sentence, just over 2 months. We find out the radiation levels for the Washington Township plant. Not only is that plant going to close, which we find out, the kind of butting heads between Minister Zhang and Philip Price. We find out that Angela finds out for us that the radiation levels are too high, so something's going on there. White Rose is connected to that. We don't know. We find out that Mr. Robot and Elliot are like separating. Like there's something going on there where they're losing touch with each other. So that's important. We find out that, obviously, most importantly, stage 2 is Elliot's plan. So is Elliot working with Dark Army? We don't know. There's a brief thing in the opening where Elliot does say, like, in 5-9 we executed the hack, but there was a third player, Dark Army. What were their intentions? We don't know. Well, maybe Elliot was closely involved. That's interesting. We don't know what to think of that. But for this one, I'm going to give it a 9.8. Like, one of the best episodes of the series, I think. Really, really good. I had chills for a lot of this episode, especially like that Philip Price scene in the rain. So good. All right, so for the White Rose Award, guys, for this one, it's got to go to Philip Price. Michael Christopher, dude, he's so good. Every time he's on screen. Rami, I was a close second as Elliot. He's really, really good in this episode too, but that scene with Philip Price is just so good. And it's like, man, he just delivers his line with such like aggression and like power and confidence. So this is the first time I've given it to Michael Christopher this season. Just to kind of recap, Elliot had the White Rose for the first 3 episodes. Technically there's 12 episodes in this season, but we really are doing 11 episodes because part 1 and part 2 of the opener are just counted as 1. So Rami won the first 3 as Elliot. Episode 4 we had Dom as the White Rose. Episode 5 Mr. Robot. Episode 6 Angela. Episode 7 Mobley. And then episode 8 is going to be Philip Price. So kind of spread out there. It was a little Elliot heavy at first. Could have maybe given it to Elliot this time, but I think Philip Price is the one that really sticks out to me. Michael Christopher's acting is always on point. He's one of my favorite characters in the series, so I love that he just stands up to White Rose and like just talks literally to his face, just tells him like, I'm not scared of you. And like, this is what's going to happen. And he's like, I'll do whatever it takes to take you down. So awesome stuff. But alright guys, that's it. That's another episode of Hello Friends. This is episode 18. So things are ramping up again as season 2 is coming to a close here. Really excited. We don't know, now that we know Elliot's plan is stage 2, what is stage 2, what's going to happen, ramifications of the hack, all that stuff. So thank you guys so much for joining me. I've been your host, Kyle. Check out the other content on the channel. Like, comment, subscribe. Go check out the other episodes of Hello Friends. And obviously keep watching Mr. Robot. And until next time, goodbye, friend.